The girl went to the bus stop and disappeared, and 2 days later she was found several kilometers away. The police began an investigation, but they were unable to find a single clue or evidence. For 38 years, this case remained unsolved, and only in 2022, innovative technologies in the field of forensic science finally helped solve this dark secret. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Mary Jane Thompson, and how science is changing the approach to solving such cases. Mary Jane Thompson was born on October 5, 1962 in Houston, Texas. She grew up in a friendly and loving family. She also had many friends. Even during her school years, the girl decided that she wanted to become a model. After studying, she moved to Los Angeles, where she lived for some time in pursuit of her dream. After that, she decided to move to Dallas to take an acting course there. At that time, the girl was 21 years old. She had to take 2 jobs to pay rent and courses. Mary worked as a waitress and saleswoman in a flower shop, devoting all her remaining time to her dream of becoming a model. She lived in such a busy rhythm for about 6 months. On February 11, 1984, Mary called her mother and said that she was going to go to the hospital because she was worried about some minor problem. The girl went there in the evening. She had to take a bus from her apartment to the clinic. When she arrived at the place, the hospital was already closed, and she had to wait for the bus again to go back. But no one has seen Mary since then. The girl did not contact her relatives, but they were in no hurry to raise the alarm. Mary combined 2 jobs with acting courses, so she often simply did not have enough time to call her parents. 2 days later, the Dallas Police Department received a call. Someone's body was found near the abandoned railway tracks, behind the warehouses. Detectives arriving at the scene saw a young girl with signs of strangulation. Documents were found on her, thanks to which the victim was quickly identified. She turned out to be Mary Jane Thompson. Medical experts examined the body and concluded that she was killed several days ago. In those years, this area was mainly occupied by warehouses, most of which were empty. For this reason, Mary was noticed only 2 days later. Experts also determined that the cause of the girl's death was strangulation, and the unknown perpetrator used her own leg warmers. He also subjected Mary to violence, due to which forensic scientists were able to extract his biological material. In 1984, this evidence was completely useless because they couldn't even extract a killer DNA sample from it, not to mention establishing his identity. But even in those years, the police had to store such samples in laboratory conditions, since law enforcement officials hoped that with the development of technology, they would be able to solve such cases sooner or later. Having examined the scene of Mary's murder, researchers did not find a single piece of evidence. The warehouse where her body was found was located about 5 kilometers from the hospital, in a remote industrial area. After talking with the girl's friends and relatives, they were able to more accurately build the expected chronology of events. Seeing that the clinic was already closed, Mary had to walk some distance to the bus stop to go home. Apparently, the criminal attacked her there, after which he loaded the girl into a car and drove her to the place where her body was found. In the absence of any evidence, investigators began to look closely at previously convicted men who lived and worked in this area. But this line of investigation did not bring any results. The police were sure that the killer knew the area well.
Not only was he able to kidnap the girl in a place where it went completely unnoticed, but he also took her to abandoned railroad tracks, which were hidden from prying eyes by warehouses. Investigators also did not have a single witness who could have even glimpsed Mary Jane that evening. There were no surveillance cameras in those years either, except for the most significant streets of the city. Thus, this matter very quickly came to a standstill. He was transferred to the Unsolved Homicide Unit, which was supposed to periodically reopen such investigations. This happened only 25 years later, in 2009. The Dallas Police Department decided to reinvestigate the murder using new technology. Experts were able to extract a DNA sample from biological material found on Mary Jane's body. But that's where their luck ended. The sample was run through all available databases, but its owner was not there.
This could indicate that he had never been prosecuted for serious crimes before, or was prosecuted in those years when DNA samples had not yet been taken from such criminals. As a result, the detective had only one thing to do: periodically run this sample through the databases, with the expectation that its owner would be caught committing some other crime. Such cases occur quite often, due to which investigators solve even the most hopeless cases. Once again, this case was resumed 9 years later, in 2018. Detective Noah Camacho then sought the help of an independent organization that focused on solving violent crimes and developing various tools and measures in an attempt to reduce the number of such cases. Together with detectives, they tried to get more resources allocated to Mary Jane's case, necessary for the latest DNA research. And only 2 years later, in 2020, the FBI joined this investigation. At that time, the Bureau had already collected a huge number of old unsolved cases in which investigators had a DNA sample of the perpetrator, but they were never able to find a suspect. With the development of technology, all these murders have a significant chance of being solved thanks to genetic genealogy. This technology, which appeared relatively recently, has become a real breakthrough in forensic science. It works roughly like this. Experts are studying a DNA sample from an unknown person using the latest equipment. Based on the data obtained, a profile is formed by which his relatives can be found. DNA from family members can get into databases in several ways. Firstly, they themselves may be criminals and end up in the FBI database. Secondly, these people can voluntarily contribute their DNA to a common accessible database intended to search for relatives or establish their ancestry. Such services have become especially popular in recent years, which has only benefited the detective. In the case of Mary Jane's murder, the search took 2 years. First, experts found his distant relatives using a DNA sample, after which the most difficult part began. They had to study the biographies of several thousand people, weed out all those unsuitable, and choose the one who was most likely to be a murderer. Screening occurs based on factors such as age, place of residence at the time of the murder, and so on. The situation is complicated by the fact that the DNA database only points the expert to a certain group of relatives, but there are no DNA samples for comparison. There is only one way out. Choose the most suitable candidate and get his DNA. In 2022, detectives received from experts the name of a person who could be Mary Jane's killer. They studied his biography and then decided to follow him. After waiting for the right moment, the police obtained an item from which a DNA sample could be taken. The laboratory carried out the necessary tests and came to the conclusion that his DNA completely matches the sample of Mary's killer. This man turned out to be 60-year-old Edward Morgan from Dallas. As the police suspected, he lived near the murder scene, just 1 kilometer away. At that time, he was only 22 years old. Morgan was soon arrested and charged with murder. He is currently in custody awaiting trial. Bail is set at $500,000. The police have not yet disclosed any details from the life of this man. They will become known only during the court hearing. But one thing can be said with complete confidence. A sample of biological material found on the victim's body completely matches his DNA. During the press conference, investigators expressed confidence that Morgan would be found guilty and punished. For his actions in the state of Texas, he faces the death penalty. Unfortunately, Mary Jane's parents did not live to see this moment. Her father, who tried to the last to get justice for his daughter, died in 2020, and her mother even earlier. Of her closest relatives, she only has her sister, who was shocked by the call from the police. After 38 years, the detective told her that the name of the killer was finally known, and he had been arrested. On her social network, her sister constantly wrote about Mary Jane. congratulating her on her birthday and saying that she would never give up hope for a solution to this case. Having learned about the arrest of Edward Morgan, the woman wished him to spend the rest of his life behind bars. She also promised to attend every court hearing until the final point is reached in this case.